Okay, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash, and the honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Now today, I want to start off with a question, right? And the question is, the greatest treasure on earth is free. So why is it so rare, right? That's the question, and dealing with that question, what is that treasure? What is the greatest treasure on earth? Which is the fear of the Lord, right? Fear in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. That would be the greatest treasure. Now this is the book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 10, verse 19. They that fear the Lord are a sure seed, and they that love him an honorable plant, in which that honorable plant would ultimately be the elect of the nation of Israel. That sure seed. They that regard not the law are a dishonorable seed. They that transgress the commandments are a deceivable seed. Right? Going into the wicked of our people, the wicked of the nation of Israel. Those who aren't, going to be of the Lord's elect. Verse 20, among brethren, he that is chief is honorable. So are they that fear the Lord in his eyes. Right? And that's the important part. It's how are you in the eyes of the Most High? You have people who worry about how they look in the eyes of men, which causes them to turn away from the Lord. But again, dealing with the Lord's elect, they're the opposite, right? They put their focus and their fear and their trust in the Lord versus, this world. The fear of the Lord goeth before the obtaining of authority, but roughness and pride is the losing thereof. Whether he be rich, noble, or poor, their glory is the fear of the Lord, right? Because, fearing the Lord makes you seek what? It makes you seek the wisdom of basically how to please the Lord, right? It makes you want to know what the will of the Lord is, so that, you don't go against that will, or you don't go against him, right? I.e. what? Disobedience. Because that's basically what the Lord is looking for, is obedience. If you think about it, what got us in this situation, what got us in the predicament that we're in as a nation as a whole, is our disobedience. Now, dealing with disobedience, right? This is the book of 2 Chronicles chapter 26. And rather dealing with obedience, right? Why is it important? It's, if not the most important thing, whether than trying to please the Lord on your own accord. This is the book of 2 Chronicles chapter 26, and it reads, pride is Uzziah's undoing, right? In which Uzziah was one of our kings at the time, in which he was basically, as it reads, the pride, if he puffed himself up to where he was going to, burn incense, I believe, on the altar, which that was only permitted for the priests to do. So in his eyes, yeah, he's trying to do something righteous for the Lord, but at the end of the day, he was being disobedient. And again, that obedience is the main thing. It's not about, what's the your thought process behind it, for lack of better words. How you intended. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not about how you intended, but what did the Lord say, right? For an example, let's say you're helping someone cook in the kitchen, right? And they give you specific instructions, and they say, all I want you to do is this, do not do this. I'll do this when I come back. You're thinking in your mind, oh, well, he's gone. I still have time. Let me just do all of this. Maybe I'll make him proud, maybe, I'll cut his job short, and maybe he'll thank me for that. That's your thought process. But when they come, right, they're mad because, maybe they wanted to do that part. Maybe that was their favorite part in doing. They didn't see it as a hassle, but as a joy. But you just took that joy away from them, thinking that you were doing them a pleasure. And that's why it's better for you to just obey the words given. Now this is 2 Chronicles chapter 26 verse 16. But when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction, right? Which is what? Pride. You know, that pride, that you get puffed up in the spirit, puffed up in the flesh, and you start thinking that you're bigger than you are. You start moving on your own accord, right? Which is why we read here, the fear of the Lord goeth before the obtaining of authority, but roughness and pride is the losing thereof. Because the more pride you have, the less fear that you have. Verse 17, and Azariah the priest went in after him, and with verse 16, but when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against the Lord Yahweh his God, and went into the temple of the Lord to burn incense upon the altar of incense. And Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him 80 priests of the Lord Yahweh by Shemawashai that were valiant men. And they withstood Uzziah the king, and said unto him, it appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto the Lord Yahweh, but to the priests, the sons of Aaron, that are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for thou hast trespassed, neither shall it be for thine honor from the Lord Yahweh by Shemawashai. Right, so here it is. You know, he's in his mind, he's seeming to do something good. You know, he's going to burn these incense, you know, in reverence the name of his God. Whereas really he's just being disobedient. You know, he's being prideful, because that's not what the Lord, you know, gave him authority to do. As we read, that was only for the priests. And Azariah the chief priest, verse 19, then Uzziah was wroth, and had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy even rose up in his forehead before the priest in the house of the Lord Yahweh, from beside the incense altar. Right, so because of his disobedience, what did the Lord do? Smote him with leprosy. That's a judgment that the Lord gave upon him, even though he was trying to reverence the Lord, you know, give honor to the Lord by burning an incense unto the Lord. But the thing is, he was being more, you know, prideful in what he wanted than what the Lord wanted. Even though he was doing it from a good heart, it doesn't matter, because that's not what the Lord said. That's not what the Lord ordained. So now you're just being disobedient. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they thrust him out from thence. Yea, himself hasted also to go out, because the Lord Yahweh had smitten him. And Uzziah the king was a leper unto the day of his death, and dwelt in a several house, being a leper, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord. Right, so him being a leper, he had to basically live away from the congregation now, you know, and he brought that upon himself through his disobedience. For he was cut off from the house of the Lord Yahweh, and Jotham his son was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Uzziah, first and last, did Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, write. So Uzziah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the field of the burial, which belonged to the kings, for they said, he is a leper. And Jotham his son reigned in his stead. So now look at the legacy that Uzziah has left for himself. You know, when we read about Uzziah, the main thing we know is him being disobedient, and he was smitten with leprosy for it. That's the legacy and the memorial that he left for himself. Now dealing with us today, you know, that's going to be the legacy and memorial that 2/3 of our people over here in America leave for themselves in their disobedience and not following, you know, after the words of the Lord. That's why scriptures say, you know, there's going to be some raised up to everlasting life, and some raised up to everlasting shame and contempt. Let's see if we can find that actually. Is that Daniel? Yeah, it is. The water how by Shemal Rashai. This is Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. And it reads, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, meaning they're dead, but they're going to be brought back to life. Some to everlasting life, which is going to be those who are part of the elect of the nation of Israel. But, you know, they're in the spiritual world right now. They're already dead. But as we read, they're going to be brought back to everlasting life. Some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Why? Because they're going to leave that memorial, that legacy for themselves as those who disobeyed the Lord. Those who didn't hearken unto the words of the Lord. Right? Now, continuing on, let's get the book of 1 Samuel. Chapter 15. Dealing with King Saul. Right? Because he was subject unto this as well. Seeming to do, you know, try and do something good unto the Lord, but really you're being disobedient. Because you're trying to honor the Lord in a way that you see fit, not how the Lord told you to. This is 1 Samuel chapter 15. We can start here at verse 19. And it reads, wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord Yahweh, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord Yahweh? Right? Because dealing with King Saul and Israel going up against the Amalekites, the Lord told them to, you know, destroy it all. Right? The cattle, the sheep, all of it, the people, destroy it all. But instead, you know, King Saul, he kept their king alive. Right? You had Israel, they came back with sheep and goats and oxen and all of this. You know, that's not what the Lord told them. Now, as we read, we're going to see, right, they did it to you know, make sacrifices to the Lord. So even though they're doing it in a good conscience, you know, of we're going to make these sacrifices to the Lord, that's not what the Lord told them to do. He said to destroy it all, and they didn't. So they were disobedient. This is 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 19. And it reads, wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord Yahweh, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord Yahweh? And Saul said unto Samuel, yeah, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord Yahweh, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord Yahweh thy God in Gilgal. Right? So the Lord told him to destroy it all, but in their minds they're, oh, well, why won't we just take this and we can sacrifice it unto the Lord? You know, he'll be happy with that. But no. And Samuel said, hath the Lord Yahweh as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Right? So to obey is the better to sacrifice. To obey the words of the Lord is better than to, you know, not do it. Even if you're trying to please the Lord according to your own way. Right? The Lord gave us specific ways as to please him, and that's just to follow his word, man. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? And that's why scriptures talk about being overly righteous, because that's basically what they were trying to be, overly righteous, and going against the word that the Lord told them to do. So, right, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Right? And what's going to get you to obey? The fear of the Lord, man. Because ultimately that's what they lacked. If they feared the Lord enough, they wouldn't have dared went against what he told them to do. So obviously, you know, the Lord's like, oh, so y'all, I'm just not scared of y'all, right? Y'all take me as a joke because I told y'all to do this and y'all didn't do this. You know, it's the same way a parent looks at their child, man. Verse 23, For rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord Yahweh, he hath rejected thee from being king. And again, liken it unto today, those who reject the word of the Lord Yahweh, the Lord is rejecting them, man. And this is why they're going to be destroyed on this side. They're going to be destroyed in this world, right? They're not going to be a part of the first fruits of the kingdom of heaven. That's going to be the Lord's elect. Lord willing, we be of that number. He hath also rejected thee from being king. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord Yahweh and thy words, because I fear the people and obey their voice. Right? So here it is. Saul just admitted to fearing the people more than the Lord. So again, it was that lack of fear that caused him to disobey the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Bashai. And it's the same thing with our people now. They are going to fear, they're going to fear Esau, fear the people of this world, fear persecution, fear insurrection for the name of the Lord more than they fear the Lord, which is what's going to cause them to disobey the words of the Lord. And what is one of the, the main things that the Lord told us not to do in this time is to take that mark, the MOTB, the RFID microchip. But you're going to have a lot of Jake who take it out of fear of this world ultimately, and not fearing Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Bashai. Continuing, verse 25, now therefore I pray thee pardon my sin and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord Yahweh. And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not return with thee, for thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord Yahweh hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. So again, he put that emphasis on, you reject the Lord rejected you. Because the Lord is dead set on, his respect being the most high. He expects his creations, right, his servants, to know that, man. So now let's get the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verse 12. Because the things that the Lord has told us, right, the certain things that we are commanded to do from the word of Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Bashai, it's all for our good. Because at the end of the day, us being disobedient, it doesn't hurt the Lord, it hurts us, right? This is Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Bashai thy God require of thee? What does he require of thee, right? So if you do opposite of what is required, is what? Is disobedience. But to fear the Lord Yahweh thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Bashai thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord Yahweh and the statutes which I command thee this day for thy good, right? So, and not even just dealing with the commandments as in the laws, but just the things that we are, permitted to do by the Lord. But as it reads in his statutes, which I commanded thee this day for thy good, right? Because again, us being disobedient, us not following the things that, us not following the will of the Lord, it all just comes back on us. We're the ones who have to pay for it. We're the ones who, have to go through the judgment, get put in captivity, so on and so forth. Not us, not the Lord, Salakia. And that's why, scriptures speak about the Lord showing us his love, how he chose Israel, and he gave us the laws, gave us the things that he told us his will ultimately, right? So that we knew how to please him. Because whether or not, if you're not with the Lord, then you're against him. So even if you don't know the will of the Lord, or you do, if you not doing according to it, you're against him, right? But the Lord, through love for his people, right, he gave us, the insight on how to please him, man. Let's get the book of Baruch. Chapter 4, we can start at from the top. This is Baruch chapter 4, verse 4. This is the book of the commandments of the Most High, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. Right? So you see how, everything we've read is dealing with commandments, 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 because really what it is obeying. The Lord said to do this, therefore I'm going to do this. The Lord said not to do this, so I'm not going to do this. But such as leave it shall die. Turn thee, O Jacob, and take hold of it. Walk in the presence of the light thereof, that thou mayest be illuminated. Right? And what is that? What does that light represent? Right? Is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of how to please the Lord. Right? This truth. We have been given the light. Not everyone has been given it. Right? Which is going to lead back to my question that I asked in the beginning. But let's continue reading first. Give not thine honor to another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. O Israel, happy are we, for things that are pleasing to the Most High are made known unto us. Right? And that was love. Because now we know how to please the Lord and ultimately save ourselves. Because again, displeasing the Lord, right? Being disobedient, that does nothing but, reflect back on you. Now the Lord has to bring the belt on you. Now he has to judge you. He doesn't get judged for your disobedience, right? You do. We do. All right, Slakia for the interruption, but picking up where I left off, right? The Lord doesn't get judged for our disobedience. We do. So it was love that he showed us in, basically telling us how not to be disobedient so that we won't get judged, right? Let's get the book of Proverbs, chapter 19, verse 23. And it reads, the fear of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Awashai, tendeth to life. And he that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. Which is why, the fear of the Lord is a treasure. Again, the fear of the Lord prompts you to obey the Lord, which, prompts your purification in the eyes of the Lord. Now, going back to the question I asked, right? Or the statement that I said, the greatest treasure on earth is free, right? Because this faith that we have in the Lord, this, will to obey the Lord, this spirit of obedience to the Lord that we have, it was free. We didn't have to pay for it. Not monetarily at least. So why is it rare? And the simple question to that is because the Lord wants it to be, right? And you're going to have those who get this gift and those who don't, because the Lord does not want everyone to receive this gift. There's some people he just wants to destroy. Right? And then that seems crazy to say, which is why a lot of people don't accept this explanation. Right? It raises questions like, oh, why would Almighty, loving God want that? Or if if the Lord purposely has people destroyed, how can he be mad at them for not, following him? Right? Now, nothing under the sun is new. Right? This question has already been answered for us, because these are questions that arise throughout time. Let's get the book of Romans chapter 9, verse 14. And it reads, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with the Most High? The Most High forbid. Right? So if the Lord purposely, blinds people, which makes them disobedient to him so that he can kill them, how is that righteous? Right? Is there unrighteousness with the Lord? Well, Most High forbid. No, the Lord is still all righteous. He's still all just. It's just that As scriptures say, the mindset of the Lord, the thoughts of the Lord, the wisdom of the Lord is way beyond our understanding. So we're not going to understand just why he does certain things. You know, he given us some understanding, some clarification, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not going to understand on the way to on the level that the Lord understands, man. And you have to accept that. His elect are going to accept that, because no matter what, they still have what? That fear in him, man. This is Romans chapter 11, verse 33, and it reads, "Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of the Most High, how unsearchable are his judgments." Right? So the reason that the Lord, you know, does certain things, the things that the Lord has happened, it's unsearchable, man. We're not going to be able to just question him and find out like that. We wouldn't understand it. You know, he one of his titles is the Most High. We're just mere mortals, mere humans. How can we hope to understand on the level he does, man? How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. Now, in the kingdom of heaven, right, you're going to have the nation of Israel, who are given a greater load of understanding, right? But it still isn't going to be just quite as, you know, high as the Lord. We're going to be like a bunch of mini hymns, basically. You know, we're going to be as Yahweh Shai was. Right, and though Yahweh Shai, who had the power that he had, but who gave him that power, right? The Most High. The Most High was always and will forever always be at that number one spot. No one is ever going to be on his level. And you just have to accept that, right? There's nothing you can do about it anyways. But continuing in his ways past finding out. Right, let's get this in the NLT. "Oh, how great are the Most High's riches and wisdom and knowledge. How impossible it is for us to understand his decisions and his ways." Right? So that's just that. And the sooner you can come to terms with that, which is basically what? Humbling yourself, you know, because you have to humble yourself to come to terms with that. To understand that, okay, this is just the Most High. There's, you know, I'm subject under him. Will forever and always be. So let me obey him, right? But going back to Romans 9, "What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with the Most High? The Most High forbid. For he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." And why is that? Because he can. Right? He's the Most High. So that's why you have those who have been given this gift of fearing the Lord and those who haven't. Because he had mercy on those who he gave the gift. And he wants to destroy those who he didn't. Let's get the book of Isaiah chapter 6 verse 8. It's Isaiah's commission, and it reads, "Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not." Right? So Isaiah would tell them, but they wouldn't hearken, because they would lack the spiritual senses to understand and perceive the words that are coming out of his mouth, right? The truth. As it says in the next verse, verse 10, "Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes." Right? Not their literal ears and heart and eyes, but spiritual. They wouldn't be able to grasp it, man. Unless they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and convert and be healed. So the Lord said, make them unable to understand it, lest they convert and I have to heal them. right? Because that's not what he wants. There's certain, people allotted to be destroyed because the Lord said there would be, right? Somebody has to fulfill that role, man. Let's get this in the NLT. And it reads, harden the hearts of these people, plug their ears and shut their eyes, right? So with the hardened heart, they're not going to do what? Adhere to the words of the Lord, meaning they're going to do what? Disobey the Lord. Plug their ears and shut their eyes. That way they will not see with their eyes, nor hear with their ears, nor understand with their hearts, and turn to me for healing. So there's just certain people that aren't going to ever get it because the Lord doesn't want them to. Now again, people may say, well, how can the Lord get mad at that if they're just doing what he wants them to do? What God purposely makes people disobey them so he can destroy them. So let's continue reading Romans 9 to get the answer to that, right? When shall we say then, is there unrighteousness with the Most High? Most High forbid. For he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of the Most High that sheweth mercy, right? It's all according to the will of the Lord. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might shew my power in thee. So the whole purpose of the Pharaoh, being how he was, the Lord putting that Pharaoh into power, not allowing Israel to leave, the Lord hardening the Pharaoh's heart just so that he can show his power. And how did he do that? By bringing all the judgments that he brought upon Egypt, that's still talked about to this day. That's showing his power. The Lord purposely did that just for that outcome. So again, the Lord is purposely making certain Israelites disobey him, purposely blinding them from hearkening and understanding his truth, just so he can destroy them and show his power in destroying them. That I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardeneth. Thou wouldst say then unto me, why doth he yet find fault? Right? So, so how can he get mad if they're doing what he's making them do? How can you judge me for being disobedient to you when you're making me disobedient? Right? But Apostle Paul goes on to say, thou wouldst say unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Right. Nay, but, O man, who art thou that replies against the Most High? Right? So who are you to even question the Lord? He's the creator. You're the creation. How does that look? And ultimately that stems back to pride, to even think that you can demand the answer from the Lord. He has to answer to you. That's nothing but pride, right? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that replies against the Most High? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Exactly. Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump, to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? Exactly, man. When you have a potter and he makes a clay pot or whatever, he can do what he wants with it. He can make it how he wants. He can make it for the purpose, for whatever purpose he wants. Right? And that goes with making anything. So there's certain people he made for the purpose to be destroyed. Because this is all just his movie, man. You have different characters and different scripts. And that's why, you have dealing with Israel, of course, Jake, who can hear this word, hear it to the perfection and still just not get it. Still just not, understand what it is they've just been told. You would think that if you told someone, if they take this mark or if they don't turn back to their God, that they're going to die a very, harmful, painful death, that they would listen and turn back so that wouldn't happen, because who wants to die, right? So obviously there has to be some kind of spiritual block in their mind. Because you think that'd be a no-brainer, right? Especially when you have, you know, when it has been broken down perfectly, right? You have proof, you have evidence that this is the truth. So why aren't you believing in it? If I told you there was a rock right there on the sidewalk, you see the rock, I picked the rock up and held it, I made you hold it, and you're going to sit there and say, oh, this is not a rock? Obviously, there's something blinding you, right? And that's exactly what the Lord did. He has angels purposely blinding people just from getting it, man. But continuing, nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against the Most High? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? Exactly, man. So that's why, you know, the greatest treasure on the earth, in the world, since there's been, you know, any treasure, is free, yet it's so rare. Because the Lord does not want everyone to obtain this treasure. And that's just that. Let's get the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24. And it reads, we start at verse 24. It's Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24. And the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. So again, for our good always. Us fearing the Lord is for our good. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, our God, as he hath commanded us, meaning for us to be obedient, right? And only the elect are going to do that in these times, because the rest, as we read, they were blinded, man. And that's why, you know, those of us who weren't blinded, those who, you know, the Lord allowed for that veil to be lifted, those who were given this gift of faith, those who were given the gift of fearing Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, we hold on to it, man, as best we can, as hard as we can. Right, and we can end off with that. This is Revelation chapter 3, verse 11. We start at verse 10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, right? And what causes you to keep the word of the Lord's patience? What causes you to keep this truth? Hold on to the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Is fear in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Because fear prompts you to obey, which shows what? Your faith. I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the earth to try them that dwell upon. Which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth, right? In which there's going to be many temptations, but that main one is what? You know, the mandatory taking of that MOTB, the marketed beast, the micro sea hill. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, right? That no man take thy crown. Now, if we look into this word fast, krateo,
Strong's G 2902, krateo,
to have power, be powerful, to be chief, be master of, to rule, to get possession of, to become master of, to obtain, to take hold of, take seize, to lay hands on in order to get him into one's power, to hold in the hand, to hold fast, not discard or let go, to keep carefully and faithfully, to continue to hold, to retain, of death continuing to hold on, of death continuing to hold one, to hold in check, restrain, right? So this faith that we've been given in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, the ability to fear Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, we hold on to it, man. And that's why scriptures say what? He that endureth unto the end. You have to endure in holding on to it. So with that being said, once more, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Lord willing, this video was edifying, uplifting, or informative in some way, shape, or form. And shalom to the hopeful elect.